And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, then just welcome, right? This is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And welcome to And Soon the Darkness. Now, And Soon the Darkness was the other horror movie that Amber Heard released in 2010. So, this movie was released in 2010. It was directed by Efron. It was written by Jennifer Derwingson and Efron. It stars Amber Heard, Odette Annable, and Karl Urban. Yes, it was. Hallelujah. So, this is a survival horror film, thriller killer, or a killer thriller survival horror film. And it opens with us seeing a girl being brutally abused and chained up in a house or a room and tortured in this room. And then we are shown Argentina 3 months later. We're introduced to Stephanie and Ellie, who are on a bike trip through Argentina. They were with a bike group, but had sort of split off and went on their own. We do see a missing poster of that girl that we saw at the beginning from the intro, and we now know her name was Camilla. So they're visiting little towns as they do their little bike trip. They check into a hotel where a lady warns them about traveling alone, which, yeah, I wouldn't do that. Even as a guy, I wouldn't do that in a foreign country. And there's very few foreign countries I would go to, as a matter of fact, in this day and age. So they go to the bar near the hotel, where they meet a couple guys, and they meet Michel, played by Karl Urban. They get flirty, especially Ellie. She's the bad one, as far as, that. I just call her, sometimes I make myself laugh at the way I write things. Ellie sluts with a guy. He gets irate. Stephanie ends up rescuing the slut. I'm mean. But she was acting totally slutty. I mean, if you are going to go to a foreign country, going to a local bar in a foreign country and putting on the Divinals I Touch Myself and doing a Jodie Foster dance from The Accused is probably not a good idea. I don't know about you, but I just don't think that's a very good idea. But Stephanie ends up rescuing her, pulling her back in the room because he's trying to get her to go off with him. Michel makes him leave because he's in the room next to theirs. The next bus, because Ellie is so hungover, they end up missing their bus, and they go back, try to find something to do that day until that evening when they can go somewhere and catch a plane or something. I don't know really what they were going to, how they were going to get out of it, but we didn't really get a chance to see because of what happens next. So they miss the bus. They go back to the hotel, try to find something to do. The lady suggests that they go to the local waterfalls where they go and sunbathe. They do end up getting into a bitch fight, where Stephanie actually finally says what I said. She's like, Ellie's like, well, just come on and say what you're mad about. I'm like, well, I could do that. You fucking slutted around, got fucking drunk, nearly got us in a lot of trouble, and you made us miss our fucking bus. And that's kind of all of what Stephanie tells her. So they have this little fight, and Stephanie takes off, going back to the motel. She finally does get a message from Ellie, though, who stays there and continues to sunbathe, telling her to meet them at the, the, what she calls it, the cow bar, because it's like got this cow motif. And so everything's all right, and Stephanie goes to meet her at this, but she never shows up. And then that Michael guy, he's there, and she tells him about, Ellie was supposed to come, but she hasn't. I feel guilty for leaving her there, so she's going to go back to try to find her. And she does go back, but she's gone. We see Ellie being dragged off through the woods. And Stephanie gets back. Michael ends up following her. So he shows up. They look around. They find a little blood. They find her phone. They call the cops, and of course they're useless. Why would they be any different in any other country than they are here? So they were completely useless. And the cop guy wouldn't do anything, plays it all off. She goes with him, though, to make a report where he warns her to stay away from Mike. So she comes out and she's like looking along. No one will really help her. She sees the slut guy. That's the guy from the bar that night that Ellie was slutting with. So I just call him the slut guy. And she chases him. She loses him. Comes back to find that her bike has been vandalized and destroyed. Goes back to the hotel. Tells the hotel lady about Ellie being missing, and goes and snoops in Mike's room where he finds a bracelet. She finds a bracelet, just like the one that Ellie was wearing. So, of course, now she's suspicious of him. She tries to tell the cop that. He says he'll question him. She sees the guy again, riding on a moped. So she actually, behind the hotel lady's back, she steals the truck keys to the hotel truck and goes after him. And they end up in this burnt out, desolated town. And she's looking around that. Girl's obviously brave, you know what I mean? Because she's just like off on her own doing this shit. They end up in a wasteland town where Mike ends up showing up as well. She confronts him about finding that wristband, that bracelet in his bag, where he then shows her pictures and says, "It's not Ellie's, it's my girlfriend, who's been missing for 6 months now, and her name is Camilla." So you're like, well, doesn't that just put everything in order? So he tells her about how she went missing. They split up and look through the area, and are going to meet back in an hour. Meanwhile, Ellie wakes up, and she's with that guy, that slut guy. And she's tied up and stuff like that. She wakes up a prisoner of his. She tries to talk him out of it, tries to attack him, but he puts her down and gets a phone call where you can tell from the phone call that basically this is human trafficking, that she's going to be sold, because they're right at the border of Portugal. So it's like, they get taken across the border and sold to Portuguese, so some Portuguese pimp, obviously. And she tries to talk him out of it. He gets that phone call. Stephanie ends up finding them. She is in the right location. So she finds him. There's a lot of tents sneaking around as she's got to try to get him away from Ellie so that she can get to Ellie. She ends up managing to do that. He catches them, of course, but not before she's got her loose. They take off running. Ellie does get some payback because she beats him with a limb, which was pretty good. They manage to get back to that truck, but he attacks, busts the windshield out, coming in there on them. They get out and run, where he ends up like getting he manages to catch up with them, and then he like roundhouse kicks Ellie or something, and she like flies through the air and cracks her head open on a rock. So she actually dies right there. Now, the cop, he's come up now. So you have Michael, you have the cop, you have Slut Guy who's beat half to death. The cop continues to beat him a little bit, tells Stephanie to get into the police car, which she foolishly does, because I was already suspicious of that cop anyway. Michael ends up getting a jump on the cop and gets his gun from him and is going to shoot. Like, where's Camilla? Well, you figure out pretty quickly that the cop is involved, and Stephanie is figuring this out too from the truck, or from the police car. It's like a SUV, like a Bronco. So she's seeing this. She realizes what's going on. And Karl Urban, Michael, he's holding the gun on the cop, and he's like, where's Camilla? And he promises that she's safe, and that he can take her to him. But they have to trade. If you give me Stephanie, I will give you Camilla. Now, there's a good tense 2 minutes there where you're like, is this fucker going to do that? And sure enough, he turns around towards Stephanie, very upset, very sad, and is like, I'm sorry. And the cop has got another gun out and shoots him dead. So you're like, well, that was called instant karma right there, because you were fixing to give her up to these sex traffickers to get your girlfriend back, and now you're dead. So, instant karma right there for making the wrong decision, because he should have just shot both of them motherfuckers, and you know it. So he shoots him. Stephanie is now imprisoned. She's being punched around by these two. They ends up knocking her out when she gets mouthy, and she wakes up on a boat. They're obviously taking her. Well, she wakes up first in the Bronco, and they take her to a boat to take her across the river to Portugal, where the guy is waiting. She ends up, she's pretty tough in this movie. She ends up like getting loose again, knocking Slut Guy off the boat, where he gets tangled up in the fishing line, which gets tangled up in the propeller of the boat, and he's trapped under there in a fishing net and can't get up, while she jumps out the boat, starts swimming. So the cop's got a choice. He can help this asshole, or he can go after her. So you can imagine that fucker drowns, because he goes after her. She does manage to make it to the beach, and she like gets up. The cop's right behind her. She gets up right into the arms of the sex trafficker. So they exchange money, and she's going to, be turned over to him. Not so fast, because she puts his balls in his throat with a knee kick, puts him on the ground, takes off running. The cop comes after her. He's got a nice little rifle with him. So she manages to make it to, I don't know, at first I thought it was like a town, but it looked more like an RV park, But she manages to get some guy to wake up and, screaming for help and all. And he sees her, and he comes to the front, and I guess he's going to open the door, but then all of a sudden there's a big bullet hole in his forehead, and he's dead because the cop's right behind her with the gun. So she just got that poor fucker killed. But so there's a nice little final girl chase type thing going around as the cop is looking for her. He finally gets a hold of her, big fight. She manages to get in a few good licks, like he does on her as well. But he does drop his gun, which she gets a hold of and blows his chest open. So she shoots him, and then as dawn approaches and comes, she ends up walking out of town. She's walking down the road, and of course now she's in Portugal, so the cop cars look different, have a different word on the side. And she is, of course, terrified. So when she sees the cop car coming, she immediately goes to the edge and gets a nice big old rock, right? Because I don't think there's any trust in law enforcement after that moment, after what's just happened. But they are good cops because a lady cop comes out, calms her down, hugs her, and the cops rescue her and ends up driving her off, and she has survived the movie. So, like I said, despite me not liking Amber Heard as a person because of what we found out so much about her that we did not need to know, but had to know, because, admit it, if you have watched any of that mess that went on between her and Johnny Depp, it's like, I learned a lot of shit about Johnny Depp I really didn't want to know. And I learned a lot of stuff about her I didn't want to know, because I've always been a fan of hers, of her horror work. I like this movie. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I really like this. This is a really good little killer thriller, And like I said, both of these movies are 2010. The Ward, John Carpenter's The Ward, and this. So it was 2 more horror movies under her belt. And what I said on the last one goes on this one, and that is, girl, you should have just stayed a Scream Queen. You went and did all your hoity-toity stuff, got mixed up with Johnny Depp. He was not the man for you, man. He's quiet, calm. She needed somebody to beat the fuck out of her. I'm sorry, but you got to give what you get, okay? There's just those kind of people. Well, is somebody who's into 50 Shades of Grey going to do real well dating a nun? You see what I'm saying? Personality types here. So, Amber Heard, who is a control freak, abusive person, needed to be with a control freak, abusive person to keep everything balanced. You know what I'm saying? Well, they say, assholes are going to live a lot better with another asshole. So when you got a good person with a bitch, or it's just, what I'm saying. So the stuff that we found out about her, the stuff that we found out about him, I didn't really want to know, and now I do, and we all do. But I of course was on his side, and I think that I just think that if she'd have just kept it on the down low and been a nice little Scream Queen, we'd have got a lot of good movies out of her. And I still say, I would be happy to welcome you back. Wouldn't you love to see a sequel to Whatever Happened to to All the Boys Love Mandy Lane? Maybe that would be a good title. Whatever Happened to Mandy Lane? But, and soon The Darkness. Amber Lane is Amber Lane. Amber Heard is very, very good in this movie. She's very good in The Ward. I absolutely love her in Mandy Lane. And I am, like I said in the last movie, I am excited. I really do want to see her new movie. The one that she just came out with, the Into the Fire or whatever, about the little demonic boy. I want to see that movie. But we'll forgive you, baby. Just come back. Be a scream queen. Ask Danielle Harris and Jamie Lee Curtis. It's not so bad to be a scream queen. You have a long, illustrious career and make plenty of money. Horror movie fans will buy your shit. So, yeah. And soon the Darkness, Karl Urban, Amber Heard, the other chick. It's a very, very good little killer thriller survival horror. Nice fights, good premise, beautiful scenery. Some really good action sequences where she has to defend herself. Good little storyline. The little twist with Karl Urban was fucked up. And yeah, I will see you in the next thing I do, which will be my August update. So, love you, miss you, bye-bye. Always remember, never forget, you're a very, very special person. Even if you're not being held hostage and sex trafficked from Argentina to Portugal. Bye-bye. I will see you in the next thing.